train yards are a challenge for cities because they take up large amounts of valuable land, and as cities grow in size, rail operations face ever-increasing congestion, and the yards themselves become barriers that impede access to land nearby. For this reason, large cities relocate historic freight yards away from downtown. Still, cities usually want to maintain or expand passenger rail. To get the most out of valuable land, most cities choose to add deck over rail. The best known example is the recently completed Hudson Yards in New York City. But there are projects underway in many places, including Toronto, which has revived a very large project, Rail Deck Park. We haven't found any examples of adding deck over freight yards, probably because of the issue of dangerous goods. In the case of the Yen Yard north of Waterfront Station and Gastown, it would be costly to move the yard to another location. The Yen Yard also accommodates long trains trying to access terminals where the terminal track is angled toward the west. Trains need to roll all the way past these terminals into Yen Yard and then back up. There has been some suggestion that the Yen Yards could be reduced in size with the completion of Terminal 2 at Point Roberts. But after many years, Terminal 2 is still awaiting final environmental assessment. If approved, it would likely become operational near the end of the decade. Given the need to maintain the Yen Yard for freight, what can we do in the meantime to enhance the waterfront? The Downtown Waterfront Working Group suggests building a walkway over the portion of the yard being used by West Coast Express. The elevated walkway would resemble the High Line in New York City and the Great Promenade Plantée in Paris. A public walkway at the water's edge runs around most of Vancouver, but is broken at Canada Place. We suggest creating a walkway-bikeway running from Canada Place behind Waterfront Station and Gastown, then ramping down to street level at Carroll before proceeding to False Creek. This would link the east and west side of the city, encouraging west side residents and cruise ship visitors to make their way to Gastown and Chinatown, helping to revitalize these unique parts of the city where many businesses are struggling to survive. It would also provide a way for walkers and people on bicycles to complete a loop around the entire downtown without having to reckon with a lot of cars. We suggest building a walkway about 10 meters wide, resting on columns between the tracks. Footbridges over the rear access road would connect the walkway to existing buildings in Gastown. You could then add park-like planting, seating, cafes, linear galleries, and so forth. The walkway could also address one persistent problem. The city's most important street now terminates in the mouth of a parking garage. We have repeatedly called for the removal of the parking garage so that Granville Street would end with views of the ocean and mountains and be animated by the arrival and departure of cruise ships. Cadillac Fairview, who owns Granville Square, the parking garage, and Waterfront Station, has resisted, claiming the need for parking spaces. But if you look at the entrance to the garage, it contains 2 entrance lanes and 2 exit lanes. If it had 1 entrance lane and 1 exit lane, the other 2 lanes could be used for public access to the walkway. The deck blocking the view down Granville Street could then be removed, opening the end of the street while maintaining almost all of Cadillac Fairview's parking. Recently, Vancouver City Council passed a motion to have staff look into restarting the planning process for the Central Waterfront.
We are planning for future generations. And I think about folks, for example, that had the foresight to protect Stanley Park in perpetuity and what that means to Vancouver, and then establishing sort of the seawall and all those amenities that make Vancouver Vancouver. And I think this is one of those situations. So for that reason, I'm happy to support it.
Being able to showcase the locations on our waterfront, I think, is, again, existential to the purpose and life of Vancouver. So very happy to support. Thank you.
Because I think that it truly is a special place in Vancouver and everyone should have access to our waterfront. And when we think about it, we should think about it as a missed opportunity until we get it to the place that it needs to be, where people actually want to come down there.
You know, for all the years that I've been on council, this has been a persistent, why isn't it happening question in terms of how important the area is. I understand it's complicated by many different landowners. There's been a lot of work that's gone into it, and it's not an, you know, it's not an easy thing to plan, but there is such incredible potential.
I remember I worked in the Harbor Center for a number of years, and during lunch hours and breaks, it was common for people to leave the building, and often people would default to sitting in that parking lot adjacent to the station, because it's a natural vista to look out to the water and the mountains. And there's no benches there, there's no plaza there. It is just a parking lot wedged between two buildings, but people gravitate to that space because it's as close as they can get to enjoy the waterfront.
And so really, at the end of the day, this is encouraging that work that staff have been working on. We all recognize it's super complicated. This gives staff the opportunity to report back on how to budget it, how to really pursue this work in earnest, working collaboratively with our partners to make this the jewel of our beautiful city and connect the waterfront for all Vancouverites.
We appreciate Council's support and appreciate their ability to recognize what the waterfront might become. We hope we can now convene the major stakeholders for this project and begin to create the waterfront Vancouver deserves.